Hey guys, and welcome to our first video for True Online Learning. I want to say a couple things before we get started. I'm not going to provide you any type of a note sheet. I know a lot of you don't have printers at home, so feel free to write anything down during these videos that you think is helpful. You have the ability to pause the video, so you can certainly do that, but you have the ability to go back and watch these videos as much as you need to. So don't feel like you have to write everything down if you can just go back and watch it another time. I'm also going to say that I don't have access to my smartboard. So me writing on these slides using my computer is a lot more difficult. So excuse my handwriting. It's probably going to look pretty bad at times, but we're going to do the best that we can. Okay. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last unit before all of this happened. And so we were at the point of needing to solve proportions, and that's something some of you are probably already familiar with. So a proportion is simply an equation stating that two ratios are equal. So remember, a ratio is sort of our fancy word for fraction. Anytime you have a proportion, it's the cross products that are going to be equal. So for example, here is a proportion. 8/3 is equal to 24/9. And so when we say the cross products, we literally want to take and multiply these items that are across from each other. So if I do 8 times 9, I know 8 times 9 is 72, right? And then I would multiply the two values going the other way. So this time I'm going to do 3 times 24, and 3 times 24 is also 72. And so these two values are in fact equal to each other, and that's what we should see. So what we'll be able to do is use a proportion, and instead of all four of these being numbers, we can have one of those values be a letter, and we can use this process to solve for that letter. And so that's what we're going to do. So there's a few ways this is going to work. First, we can give you the proportion. So if you look at the three examples here on your screen, each one of these is simply asking you to solve each proportion. So if I want to solve these proportions, I'm going to cross multiply just like I did on the previous slide. It does not matter which way I multiply first. So I could do 3.2 times 36, or I could do 9 times n. Because I have a letter, we normally like our letters on this left-hand side. So I always start where that letter is. So I'm going to do 9 times n. And so that gives me 9n. And then that has to equal and go the other direction. 3.2 times 36 is going to be 115.2. And so what we have now is a very basic equation. Anytime we have that number and letter being multiplied, we can divide both sides by 9. And so I'm going to find that the letter n is equal to 12.8. And that's my answer. So I cross multiply, I divide to get my letter by itself, I get the answer. So if I do the same thing here on number 2, again, I'm going to multiply with my letter first. So 4.8 times x. So that's just going to be a 4.8x. Then I'm going to multiply the other two values. In this case, 16 times 1.5. That's going to be 24. And then again, we need to divide by whatever is here with our letter. In this case, that's a 4.8. So we divide by 4.8 on both sides. And that gives me x equals 5. Okay. If you want to give one of these a shot, maybe hit pause real quick and do number 3. I'm going to go ahead and do 3. So if you did it yourself, here's your check. Again, I'm going to do the letter first. So in this case, 20 times A. So 20A equals, and the other way is 4 times 7, so that's 28. I'm going to divide by 20. And A, in this case, is going to equal 1.4. Okay, and so this is the first way that we can solve proportions. The whole proportion is given to you. Your job is simply to solve it. The next way that proportions work is they put a little bit more information. So now we actually know where the numbers are coming from. So if you look at number 4, it says 6 goals in 14 games, 9 goals in G games. So I'm still being presented with the same 4 items. They just don't have the fractions yet. So it's your job to set up the 2 fractions to make the proportion. The nice thing here is they've given you everything very straightforward. The first line is the first fraction. The second line is the second fraction, top over bottom. So if I'm going to set this up, there are 6 goals happening in 14 games equal to 9 goals happening in G games. So there is my proportion. I'm going to use the exact same steps that we did on the last question. So 6 times G. And that's going to equal 14 times 9, and 14 times 9 is 126. And then we need to divide by 6. And so G is going to equal 21. And then the other key here is because we have information, we do want to label this was 21 what? And if I go back to my problem, right, it was games. So we do want to write that. I'm going to do the best I can here. Right, we want to label our answer. So 21 games. There we go. And that's how it's done. So if I take that same approach over here to number 5, I've got 14 gallons costing D dollars. Okay, notice where that letter is going to change. Just do what it says. 8 gallons for $24.72. Also notice with these, we are going to have decimals to work with. Just make sure if you're using your calculator, you're typing things carefully. 8 times D. 14 times my $24.72 is 346.08. We're going to have to divide both sides by 8. D equals, I know I'm working with money here, so I'm going to go ahead and put my $sign. That's going to be my label. And when I divide this by 8, I get $43.26. And so once again, if you want to try this on your own, go ahead and hit pause and do number 6. I'm going to go ahead and do number 6. So if you did it yourself, here's your check. So if I set up my proportion, x over 0.54 equal to 4.55 over 1.89. And so in this case, we're talking about inches in hours. So maybe this was the snow we never got this winter. Cross multiply. So our 1.89x is equal to 0.54 times 4.55. Just be very careful with all these decimals. 2 0.457. That's what came up on my calculator. So I'm just going to keep all of the numbers for right now, and we're going to see what happens. So if I divide this by my 1.89, that means in this case, X is going to equal 1.3. And then if I look back up at the top, this was 1.3 what? Inches. So there we go. You can either be given the whole proportion, or they can have it sort of set up, at least very straightforward, but you actually have to make the two fractions.